Good evening and welcome to the Stearns County Board of Adjustment public hearing for Thursday, March 14th, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd just like to do a roll call for members. Dan?
Here.
Bonnie?
Here.
Jason?
Here.
Rob?
Here.
Amy?
Here.
George?
Here.
And I'm Jill DeLong. I have a couple of announcements to make. If you are in possession of a cell phone or some other type of electronic paging device, I ask that you put it on silent mode at this time. Also, please note that all testimony is being recorded for the record. If you are going to speak, you will be asked to state your name and address for the record first, and then go ahead with your input after you've been recognized by the chair. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners, with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts, one member at large, and one member appointed from the Planning Commission. I'm going to give a brief overview of our proceedings this evening. I will read the variance request and open the public hearing. While I'm reading your request, I would ask that the applicant or their representatives come forward and have a seat in front of the board by the microphone. The applicant will be asked to state their name and address for the record. Environmental Services staff will provide a brief overview of the requested variance, the staff report, and if any correspondence has been received regarding the request. The applicant will then provide any input, corrections, concerns, comments, etc. Once the applicant has provided their testimony, the board will discuss the request and ask questions of staff or the applicant. Upon completion of the board questions, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request. If there is, I would ask that person to come up to the podium, make sure the little green light is on, state their name and address for the record, and give their testimony. When all testimony is complete, I will ask the board members for a motion to close the public hearing. Once the motion has passed to close the public hearing, there will be no further input from the audience, from the applicant, or Environmental Services staff, unless recognized by the chair, or if one of the board members wants some type of clarification. The board will review and discuss the findings of fact. The findings are a series of questions that the board is required to answer based on Minnesota statute and the requirements of the ordinance. Based upon the answers to those questions, the board will either grant or deny the variance request. All questions must be answered in the affirmative by the board. Once the findings are complete, there will be a motion to approve or deny the request based upon those findings. Okay. So for the agenda items tonight, there's a slight change. We will be doing Brian and Maria Miller first, and we will move Michael and Abby Barthel to second. Okay. Agenda item on revised number 1. An after-the-fact request from Brian and Maria Miller, Richmond, Minnesota, from Section 9.9.9A1 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance Number 439 to leave as constructed a 1,654 square foot residential dwelling with attached garage less than 10 feet to a side property line. Also, to construct a 24 by 30, 720 square foot second story addition above the attached garage less than 10 feet to a side property line. Said ordinance requires a 10-foot setback to a side property line. Affected property is Lot 7, Everett, Southview Heights, Section 24, Township 123 North, Range 31 West, Munson Township. Property address 22105 J Avenue, Richmond, Minnesota. Are you the applicant? Please state your name and address for the record and make sure the green light's on.
Yes, ma'am. The name is Brian Miller. I live at 22105 J Avenue Southeast, Richmond, Minnesota, 56368.
Thank you. Site visit roll call. Dan, Bonnie,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes, and I briefly talked with the applicant.
Okay. I did not visit the site. Rob,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
George.
No.
Okay, thank you. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The applicants own Lot 7 of Everett's Southview Heights on Cedar Island Lake in Munson Township. Everett's Southview Heights was platted in 1966 prior to the official controls. The tract contains 20,286 square feet in lot area per the survey provided with the application. The property is an R1 zoning district. The applicants purchased the property in 2023. There is an existing 1,654 square foot residential dwelling with attached garage and a 692 square foot deck that were permitted and constructed in 2012. Based on that permit file, the northeast corner of the attached garage was proposed to be 11 feet from the east property line. According to the survey provided by the applicants, the northeast corner of the attached garage was constructed 9.7 feet from the east property line. There are 3 sheds on the property that are less than 150 square feet. Those sheds do not require a permit to be located on the property. The 2 sheds near the west property line will need to be relocated or removed to a spot on the property that meets all the required setbacks. The applicants have removed 108 square feet of existing deck and 60 square feet of retaining wall to meet the 25% impervious lot coverage requirement. The applicants are proposing to alter the pitch of the roof on the attached garage from an 8/12 pitch to a 12/12 pitch. The alteration will allow for the construction of a second-story bonus room for an office. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Cedar Island Lake, which is classified recreational development. Cedar Island is on the list of impaired waters for mercury and fish. The subsurface sewage treatment system on the property was permitted and installed in 2012. The system was certified compliant in June of 2023. The impervious lot coverage for the property was 25.8% per the survey provided with the application. The applicants have removed a portion of the deck and some retaining wall to reduce the impervious to 25%. The proposed addition will not create any new impervious surface. The proposed setback represents a 3% deviation from the required setback. Munson Township, Sauk River Chain of Lakes Association, Sauk River Watershed District, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request, and we have not received any correspondence regarding this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, do you have any other comments or additional information you'd like to state on the record?
Yes. The addition would be 388 square feet, not over 700. The roof has a pitch to it, and the room would only occupy a portion underneath that pitch.
So
That
you're
would be
saying
all I
that
would
the
add.
external is bigger than what the internal is significantly?
It's like a triangle. It's a math thing.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board?
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman. So for staff, so I'm assuming there was an original survey that said there was 11 feet off the property line, or was that based on the?
Madam Chair, members of the board. So when people propose to build something, we ask them to stake the house out on the property. Now, if you look at the survey here, see how it's kind of cockeyed a little bit, that structure? My guess is when they went to dig the foundation, maybe they just didn't dig it straight with that property line. So this corner, it's not showing on there, but yeah. But anyways, that corner there obviously shifted a little bit. So when we did our site inspection of the staking, our staff member pulled 11 feet from what was determined to be the property line. At that time, we did not require surveys like we do today for being that close to a property line. You know, at that time, we didn't require any sort of a survey. Now, if you want to build less than 1.5 times the required setback, we require you to have a survey. And so when he applied for his permit to put this addition on, we required him to obviously to have a survey done. And because of that, we found out it was only 9.7 feet. So I can't speak on behalf of the inspection from 2012. All I can go off of is the documentation that we have, and the documentation said 11 feet from the property line. Now, obviously, when they go to start digging footings, those stakes are pulled, and so maybe they, you know, turned the house a little bit when it was being dug, because it's not, it's, as you can see, it's not running parallel to that property line like it probably was proposed originally.
So then it's just a piece of, it's not the entire wall of the house, it's just a
Correct.
piece of that.
Correct. Yeah, we're talking, it's 9.7 feet, so
Right.
it's a
Okay.
very minimal amount of deviation,
Yep.
but yet deviation nonetheless, so.
Thank you.
I was at the site and took a look at that, and I'm seeing you're not impacting the neighbor at that point. Everything stays the same. This is a vertical.
Correct.
This application is to try to bring up a difference that nobody saw. There were no as-built done to make sure the house was located in the right spot or anything afterward. And the house was built in what year?
2012.
So for 11 years, that has been sitting where it
Correct.
is. Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yeah, it won't be changing anything. Just that pitch of that roof is going to be going a little steeper. And you want to pull up that one picture that shows, he has a building plan that actually shows the existing and then what it will look like when it is all said and done. I think you can go to the next
I
one.
understand the usable space being
Next
inside of that.
one.
Naturally, you're not going to be
There
able
it
to
is.
use all the way out to the
So
peak.
this black line is the existing. This is the new proposal. So it's just going to get a little bit steeper pitch on there. But because it's not meeting that setback right now, it's, you know, this addition isn't going to meet it either. And so we need to clean up the existing with an after the fact. That way, if anything were to ever happen to this structure, it could be replaced in that same location if it needed to be. And then obviously the new addition of the bonus room up top.
And I noticed the other fixes over there. I saw the sheds going forward. I have a question for you, Mr. Miller. On the water runoff that goes over, that you have right there, it looks like it goes under. Where does that drain go to?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, sir.
There's a gutter over on this plan left on that drops down, and it goes down underneath your walkway, and it goes into a surface. Where does that water drain to?
Well, there's some, I think they're called drainage tile kind of things. They go into the lawn underground somewhere.
Okay.
I don't see any of these going. A couple of them come out under the deck. I don't see anything going into the lake,
Okay.
if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm
not-
just wondering because it's not going through the wall. I looked at the wall on the
Oh,
other
no, it's
side.
not
and
going
there's
through the
nothing
wall,
through the
no.
wall, so nothing going on here. And the other one, the impact would be with a larger roof space. You could see a little more drainage coming off of it, but it doesn't seem like there's
Right,
an issue
okay,
at that point.
I understand your question now. So, to the right of the garage, as you're facing it, the gutter wraps around the front of that overhang porch, and then it goes off to the side of the house on the right side. On the left side of the garage, as you're facing it, that drains down to the left side of the garage.
Okay.
Nothing goes underneath the driveway.
Nothing goes down underneath the drive, okay.
Correct.
And the other is, just to clarify, if I look at the plan here, it's 9.7, but only that small corner of it is 9.7. That's out there, yeah, right?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Question for staff about that 9.7, is that the wall as it touches the ground, or is that where the overhang of the roof soffit is?
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, we do allow a 2-foot overhang to encroach into that setback. So that is actually the wall of the garage.
Okay,
And it's really just this corner right here. As you can see on the survey, this dotted line represents the 10-foot setback, And so it's just literally this little bit of a corner that goes into that setback.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this request? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this request? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this request?
Madam Chair, Jason Wiedemann, motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion from Jason
I'll second.
and a second from Dan. The public hearing is now closed. Okay, so at this point, we'll move towards the after the fact findings. So it sounds like there are two findings that we want to go through. One is after the fact for the existing building, and then the second one is the findings of fact for the proposed addition. Okay. So for after the fact findings, we want to also consider a few factors. Did the applicant act in good faith and attempt to comply with the ordinance? Did the applicant make a substantial investment? Is the construction completed? Are there similar structures in the area? And are the county's benefits outweighed by the applicant's burden if the applicant were required to comply with the ordinance? Number one, is the proposed use allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located? Yes or no?
Yes, houses are allowed in this zoning district.
Okay, I have a yes from Bonnie. Dan?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Amy? Yes. George? Yes. And I am a yes. Number two, is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official control? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'd say yes, it is. It's a very, very minor. That it's 9.7. It's minimal.
Okay, I have a yes from George. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Number three, is the variance request consistent with the comprehensive plan? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I would say yes under Lakeshore Living Policies number 8. The project, it preserves the sight lines and it doesn't negatively impact anybody's views, and it maintains the residential character.
Okay, I have a yes from George. Dan?
Yes, for the same reasons.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes, and I'd like to add living goals number 3, support housing options.
And I am also a yes. Number 4, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control? Yes or no?
From the information I have, yes.
So Dan is a yes. Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Number 5.
Madam Chair, do we have any reasons? Usually it's yes and.
Oh, I thought Dan did give. But
I just heard a yes, but please correct me if I'm wrong and I'll type it up.
Yeah, it's, I don't know of anything else, that it could be used for. It's a dwelling going forward, as it is and it's proposed. I think that was the answer to the question. Right? So I don't have any apprehension. I guess maybe I should have just said yes.
So I guess the question is proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner. That's not permitted. So what kind of use is he using that seems reasonable?
It's a residential and you want an extra space up there, could be used for office or.
It's exactly for office space.
Okay.
Madam Chair, correction. We are speaking now at this round about the fact that the garage is on the corner.
All right, thanks for the correction.
So I would say yes, it's a reasonable use of the property to have a garage connected to your house. So it's the garage use that we're talking about.
Thank you. Number 5, is the plight of the landowner due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman, I would say yes. The landowner purchased the property as is, and this resurveying the plat identified this very small error. So it was not due to any fault of the landowner.
Thank you. I have a yes from Jason. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Number 6, will the variance maintain the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, it's been there for many years. It's not going to change or alter anything.
I have a yes from Amy. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations, yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, I believe economics weren't discussed.
Okay, I have a yes from Amy. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All questions answered in the affirmative. I'm looking for a movement to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the after effect.
Okay, I have a motion from Amy to approve the after the fact. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And a second from Dan. I'll do a roll call. Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. We've approved the after the fact. Okay, let's move forward to the findings of fact. So this is regards to construct a 24 by 30 second story addition above the attached garage that's 9.7 feet to a side property line. Number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Sure, that's a yes. Additions are allowed in R1 zone.
I have a yes from Amy. Dan?
Same answer, Madam Chair.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls or any related ordinances, yes or no?
Madam Chair, that's a yes. It's minimal addition to an existing structure.
Okay, I have a yes from Amy. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Madam Chair, that's a yes with living goal number 3, support housing options.
Okay, I have a yes from Amy. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman, I believe the answer is yes, in that a home office above a garage would seem to be a reasonable use of the property.
I have a yes from Jason. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yeah, but I would like to add to the reasonable. He is using an existing structure, so that would be reasonable.
Okay. George?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, that property was purchased that way.
Okay, we have a yes from Amy. I'd like to add to that it sounds like when the property was built, everybody made their best attempts at meeting the ordinance at the time. This is a very minor difference, so I believe it is unique to the property and the measurements used at the time. Dan?
Yes, and for the reason that it's been there for this long, and it doesn't encumber the landowner next to him, and it's not a fact that he knew when he purchased the property.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I was a yes. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, that structure has been there for many years, and it's really not going to change much.
Okay, I have a yes from Amy. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Say yes, and the changing the pitch isn't really going to make a difference to the locality.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations. Yes or no?
I'll say yes. Sorry.
Okay, you have a yes. Could you explain a little bit why you believe it's a yes, please?
On this, I think it'll enhance the property going forward. The additional space right now, it's waste space above the garage. It's pretty common, like was said before, to have an office, a separate office on the property. The other issue with the advancement of home officing, I think that it's needed and a great answer to a problem.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add to Dan's that economics weren't discussed either, so that's a yes.
Okay, Bonnie,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Rob,
Yeah.
George? Yes. And I am also a yes. So seeing all answers in the affirmative, I'm looking for a movement to approve.
Madam Chair, before we move that, I just noticed on the report, if the motion is moved to approve the variance, staff recommends a condition is placed to remove any future residential dwelling one-time 24-foot encroachment. Could you explain that?
I believe that is the feedlot one. Are you looking at
Am I?
feedlot
Yep.
one?
Okay, sorry.
Next one.
Jumped ahead.
But thanks for pointing it out.
Well, it looks like there is a condition where it says, if granted a condition that the 2 sheds near the west property line must be relocated to a location that meets all required setbacks or removed prior to issuance of the construction site permit.
But he was doing that already, correct?
Madam Chair, members of the board, my understanding from a recent conversation with him was one shed is going to be going up for sale.
Correct. The builder said that he would get someone to buy it, and the other one he would move with his equipment 4 feet from the neighbor's property line. I think it encroaches it's closer than 4 feet than it ought to be. So that's being moved. The other shed's being removed completely because it's also too close to the road.
Yeah, so he's in compliance.
So it sounds like adding that condition to the variance approval will not be burdensome. Okay, so still looking for a motion to approve. Whether or not you want to include that condition is up to the mover.
Do you have to include it if it's already in the process?
I would say it hasn't been completed yet.
But it's in the process,
It could stop.
complying.
From my opinion, it sounds like something that Environmental Services is requesting to ensure that it does happen. Because I understand this applicant, he will probably do everything as perfect as possible, but in the very, very small chance that he decides to stop, we want to put that in there per recommendation from the staff to ensure that it is completed.
Madam Chair, Angie Berg, Environmental Services, I'll also add that technically there's a provision in the ordinance that says if you're in violation, you can't get a permit. So even if you don't add the condition, we're still going to be requiring it, the buildings to be in compliance before we issue the construction site permit. And again, not a reflection on Mr. Miller, but I have a whole list of them over the last 5 years that we're chasing them after they get their permits and they're living in their home or their addition. So we put it in here mostly so the applicant is aware of it and it's not like a month later when they apply for their permit. But if you're uncomfortable putting it on, it's still not going to happen and the permit still won't be issued until the structures are in compliance.
Madam Chair, I recommend we approve the variance with condition number 2.
Okay, I have, Jason has a movement. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from George. Going to do a roll call. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason? You
Yes.
already said yes. Rob?
Yeah.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So approved. Please speak with staff, and they will assist you during normal business hours if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 2, revised. A request from Michael and Abby Barthel Albany, Minnesota, from Section 6.9.5D of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance Number 439 to permit a dwelling 250 feet from an animal feedlot greater than 10 animal units. Said ordinance requires a 700-foot setback from a dwelling to an animal feedlot registered for 100 animal units or more. Affected property, 29.2 acres, part of the S2SW4 in Section 3 of Albany Township, T125R31, Stearns County, Minnesota. Property address 37058, State Highway 238, Albany, Minnesota. So applicants, make sure the little green button is on, and please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sam DeLeo. My address is 13 11th Avenue North, St. Cloud, 56303.
Okay.
Michael Barthel, 37058, State Highway 238, Albany, Minnesota, 56307.
Okay.
Abby Barthel, 37058, State Highway 238, Albany, Minnesota, 56307.
All right, thank you. I'll do a roll call to see who was able to visit the site. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I was not able to visit the site. Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes, and I put on the record, met with.
Okay. George?
No.
All right. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board. So this is a request from Section 6.9.5D of the Stearns County Land Use Ordinance 439 to permit a new residential dwelling 250 feet from the nearest feedlot that's registered for more than 10 animal units in an agricultural 40 zoning district. Said ordinance requires a minimum setback of 700 feet for a new residential dwelling to a feedlot that's registered for more than 100 animal units. This is located in Albany Township in Section 3. The existing residential dwelling is located 323 feet from the closest point of the neighboring feedlot to the south. The new residential dwelling is being proposed 73 feet closer to the neighboring feedlot, and so that is on one of your submitted site plans with the application, showing the existing and then the line for the new home. The site itself is also registered for greater than 10 animal units as a feedlot. In the application, it had stated that there is also a personal business on site that does sandblasting. The property is 29.20 acres in size. It is also zoned A40. The existing residential dwelling on site is 323 feet from the existing neighboring feedlot, which that feedlot is currently registered for 76 animal units as of November 2023 and has had a previous permitted maximum allowed of 192.2 animal units. They're looking at constructing the new residential dwelling 250 feet from the closest point of the neighboring feedlot, which is located to the south of the proposed home location. Stearns County Ordinance 439 does allow a one-time 24-foot encroachment. The no further encroachment distance allowed without a variance is 299 feet. So that's shown on one of your maps that's labeled the buildable area map. That is reciprocal as far as setbacks are concerned, so the feedlot to the south does also have that one-time use allowed. All the surrounding parcels are zoned A40. Road access to the property is from State Highway 238. The current closest point of the neighboring feedlot to the south is an open lot area, and part of that open lot area is up against the property line. The feedlot to the south would be allowed no further encroachment and to construct within that historic feedlot footprint, which is identified on one of the maps in your packet, which is that purple outline. Environmental Services staff were on site on March 1st of 2024 for an on-site verification of survey stakes. So there was survey stakes out on site and also representation the building location. Albany Township, City of Albany, the Star Post, and property owners within 500 feet of this property have been notified of this request. I did get one correspondence regarding this application. I did send that to board members, but I'll wait until the public input part to read that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Applicants, if you have anything you'd like to say towards this variance request?
Basically, they are in need of replacing their 108-year-old home. And by wanting to live on the property and continue to run their business, they decided that rather than tear the house down and build in the exact same spot, they would build next to it. With safety concern, with the driveway, there's a reasonable amount of truck traffic going through there for the agricultural and the sandblasting business. They wanted to set it back from the driveway or from the existing east-west driveway, which that dimension doesn't show on there, which I apologize, but it's like 55 feet. So about 55 feet from the edge of the east-west driveway is where the garage would be, which would allow for, number one, parking of their vehicles. Number two, keep the kids away from the driveway. So just trying to, I guess, keep things safe. And the location of the home would allow them to use the existing well and the existing septic system, thereby saving resources.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board?
Madam Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thanks for meeting me out at the site. I had a chance to walk through and meet the Barthels. One of the concerns that was brought up, and you did, was the safety situation they have where you're 2 steps down onto an active driveway, and also where businesses are coming in. That's a pretty good concern. And the age of the house being 108 years old, there's not much more you can do, with that building. I see the the new place. I walked where it's going in. It it looks like it fits the setting. I have a question on the feedlot. The feedlot looked like it was overgrown. Is it active at this point, or is it just designated?
Well, the actual feedlot right on the property line is not active, but a little farther to the south of that, the south of the big machine shed they have, there they do have cattle actively in there.
Okay. Because that looked like about 3-foot high weeds, and this looked like a definition of feedlot, if I'm correct, you can't grow anything on a feedlot, right? Otherwise.
Madam Chair, members of the board, so feedlot's definition is no basically existing growing vegetation during the growing season. So as you can see in this site plan, it is dirt. But even though that there was vegetation out there at the time, it is an A40, it is an active feedlot. At any time, they can reuse that lot without having a permit because it is existing, it is being an active feedlot. So just because they don't use that open lot for 1 year, they can use it the following year without reapplying for a permit. So.
Okay, thank you.
And question for staff, just to clarify, the neighbors did give a letter for support, correct?
Madam Chair, members of the board, yes, that would be the public input that I did mail out, and then I'll get that into the record once we have that open.
I do have a question for applicants. Do you guys have any buried power lines, power sources, tile lines on that property?
Where exactly are you talking?
Just anywhere. That may not be on the map indicating.
The power overhead?
Well, no, the power is underground.
To
Do
the
you know?
existing house.
Okay.
So it'll have to be reconnected to the new home.
Where's the power source at, though?
North of the existing house.
Okay. And no tile lines in the fields?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, when I was out on site, that was one of the questions I did ask the applicants too. And so north of the existing home, I don't know on this site plan, but maybe one of the other maps, but there was that yard light power pole there, and that's where the main boxes were attached to.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request? Okay, staff, you said you wanted to read in a letter?
Yep, so we received public input on March 11th of 2024, and it just states, we, Jerry and Carol Wenning, fully understand that Michael and Abby Barthel have plans to build a new home on their property within our feedlot setback as outlined by the county. We agree and are in full support of their building plans as outlined on their drawing. And so there's the printed name and signature, both of Carol Wenning and Gerald Wenning, and then dated 2/9/2024 behind their printed and signature names. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, it sounds like we have no more input from the audience, so I'm looking for a movement to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I'll move to close the public hearing.
All right, we have a movement from George. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Bonnie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the public hearing is closed. Let's move on to the findings of fact. The variance request is to construct a new residential dwelling 250 feet from a feedlot that is registered for more than 10 animal units in an agricultural 40 zoning district. Number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman, a residential dwelling is allowed in the A40, so yes.
I have a yes from Jason. Dan?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yeah.
Amy?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls or any related ordinances. Yes or no?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is a little bit difficult because of what's clearly stated in black and white. I'm going to say yes, because the intent is, to have people live on the property. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
I'm going to add to Dan's and say that there is support from the neighbors on this, so I'm a yes.
And I'll also be a yes, and I'll add that the neighboring property, the feedlot is already is right on the property line. And looking at the property, if they were to want to expand, they would not be able to expand any closer anyway because of the property line. They'd have to expand the other direction. So it's good that they support it, but it also couldn't affect them.
And Madam Chair, just one more yes while we're at it. The applicants live on the parcel. One of the purposes of the ordinance and official controls is to reduce land use conflicts. They clearly know the feedlot's there. It's not a surprise. So they are probably familiar with the sight, sounds, and smells of feedlots in the area. So there would be no conflict between the landowners because they're aware of the property they're moving into.
Okay. So I have a yes from Dan, Bonnie, Jason, and Amy. Rob?
Yeah.
George?
Yes.
I'm also yes, and I want to also underline that the existing dwelling does not meet the 700 feet. It's 320 feet away. While this one is closer, it sounds like it's for a good reason. It's for the way that they're going to continue to use the property, for the safety of the people living there. So to me, I think it is in harmony with the general purposes of the official control. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes to that. Living goals number 3. with the kids around there, I do agree. It's safer to push the house back. There's a lot of traffic that comes in and out. We have our home business on our place, so I totally get it.
I'm going to say yes, and also for agricultural use policies number 4, speaks about protecting prime farmland, and so if you were looking at relocating this house somewhere else on the property, you might be taking up farmland space.
Yep, predominant.
Okay.
And I'm going to say yes, and my thunder was stolen. So I appreciate that. You said it better than I could. So.
I will also say yes under agricultural goals number 4 to strive for and support higher farm profitability and family farm stability. And number 3 to retain areas with highly valued agricultural land or economically viable animal agricultural or operations. Jason,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
that's a yes for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
Well, Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes to that. I mean, it is reasonable to want a new home when you live in an older home. And I, again, will reiterate, it is a safer space with small kids.
Okay, that's a yes from Amy. Dan,
Same answer, yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Rob,
Yeah.
George,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes to this. Ideally, when on the property, there's so many outbuildings and not to take up predominant land, the fields, it ideally to me is probably the best place to put the home.
Okay, that's a yes from Amy. Dan,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Rob,
Yeah.
George,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, and I want to add that unique to the property, so the existing building is already encroaching on that 700 feet, and just due to the way that the land is used, the way that the other land is used for agricultural purposes, it really is unique to this property, along with the positioning of the neighbor's feedlot. So I will also be a yes. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, there's other homes located on Ag 40s in the area.
Okay, I have a yes from Amy. Dan,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Rob,
Yeah.
George. Yes. I'm also a yes. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes, economics weren't discussed.
Okay. Dan,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Rob,
Yeah.
George, and I'm also a yes. All answers in the affirmative. I'm looking for a movement to approve. I do want to make sure that we look at what the recommended conditions from staff is on page 3. It says staff recommends if a variance is granted that a condition is placed to remove any future residential dwelling one-time 24-foot encroachment.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I have a motion from Dan. I have a question for staff. So what does that mean about the one-time 24-foot encroachment?
Madam Chair, members of the board, so in ordinance, if they were to propose moving the home 24 feet closer to the feedlot from the existing home, they could do that without a variance. So since it's closer, it really already voids the 24-foot encroachment. So this is just basically a black and white statement that it's clear for future owners, for staff in office. So that's what that condition there is.
So it's basically saying if we approve this, that uses up that 24-foot one-time chance.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that's correct. So by approving the variance, they can't use the one-time 24-foot to add an addition 24 feet closer without coming back for another variance if that was what they wanted to do. So
Thank you.
You guys only plan on building once, right?
go ahead. So Dan, when you said you wanted to approve the variance, is that with or without that condition?
It's already in there, correct? It's no activity, it's already listed in it, right?
Well, it's listed as a recommendation. We
recommendation.
need to act.
Yeah, I'll put along with that recommendation.
Okay,
thank
so
you.
he moves to approve the variance with the recommendation that the 20-foot encroachment one time is removed.
I will second Dan's.
And a second from Amy. Bonnie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Rob?
Yeah.
George?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. The variance has been approved. Thank you very much. And you can talk to staff if you have any questions during normal business hours. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the meeting minutes, if we wanted to approve those.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February.
I have a motion from Amy
I'll second.
and a second from Rob. Bonnie?
Yes.
Dan? Yes. George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Jason?
Abstain?
Jason abstains. Okay, so the meeting minutes have been approved. Are there any announcements from staff? Nope. Okay, I do have a question. Okay. I do have one question, with regards to the first item that we looked at where it was 9.7 feet instead of 10 feet. Is there any fudge factor or any percentage of difference? Because, today we measured it at 9.7, 20 years from now we have even more hyper-specific measuring tools. Is there any kind of fudge factor allowed? All right, so staff says no, they don't have a microphone though, just in case Bonnie looks. All right, looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I'll move to,
All right, I have a motion, looking for a second.
I'll second.
A second from Dan, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yep. And in regard to that, my son through